There's no image, Usman, but it doesn't really matter. Sorry?
The camera is a slider.
Ah.
The top. Move the left. Right.
Ah, yes. Okay, it's like it's not like full, but okay, I see. Oh, got it. Ah, I didn't know that sort of thing. That's unique, is that, mashallah? Learn a new thing today. Right. Anyway, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in ma ba'du. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our daily fiqh hour. A couple of minutes late, just giving a little bit of a background to the Satis here. And inshallah, as we've been discussing throughout, we're not going to focus on a theme because we've got plenty of themes going out. Hopefully you're watching the videos appearing on our YouTube channel, both after Fajr and also after Asr. So please do share with others. Many people say that they find them beneficial, alhamdulillah, but it's always useful to then share with others as well. There are people who sit in front of the camera, do the talking. There are people who are doing more work behind the scenes, making sure that the videos are right, putting the titles, doing all the hard work really. And then obviously they get a share of the reward. The person who sits in front of the camera gets a share of the reward. But also, if you want to share the reward, then that's going to come with sharing with others, with family members. Ad-dalu ala al-khayri kafa'ilihi, as our Prophet ﷺ instructed, that person who indicates towards good is like as though the one who performed that act in itself. So, okay, we may not be able to do computer geeky stuff. Sorry about that, Osman, and other things like that. But we might be able to share a link. We might be able to send put something up on our WhatsApp and all the rest of it, and that a person will get the same ajr. So Allah SWT makes it so easy, depending on what your capacity is, what your capabilities are. Each person can play a part. The ummah then can be successful. Ameen. So let me just quickly see if there were some questions, because I do recall some questions. I'll get them out of the way from the Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha. We do have, I don't know if the chaps know, we do have 2 Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha channels. In fact, that's how it all first started. Just a little bit of background, because I've not discussed it with these chaps. Many moons ago, I think it was sort of around 2013, 2014 time. I wasn't on any form of social media up until that point. In fact, I was very anti-social media. I was anti-Facebook, anti-Twitter, anti all this sort of thing. I just felt it's a serious disease that is going to affect our youth, and it's going to affect a lot of people and move them away from what they're supposed to do. And it was, as I was mentioning, a senior ustad that I take great respect, I hold in high esteem, and he was very adamant that I should start moving into that sort of area. Initially said obviously with Iqra TV, so I did quite a lot of work with Iqra TV. I've had a number of programs on there. I do like a Q&A on that as well. I've not been there now for a few months because I've been busy with a few of the projects, but I used to have on, I think, 7 till 8 p.m. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I used to have a live Q&A that people used to phone in and take questions. But prior to that, obviously my ustad sort of was saying, look, you need to get on there. You need to be out on the social media. Why? Because there's a lot of people talking nonsense on these formats now, and people are getting confused. And as he perceived it, he says, look, you're articulate, you're born and raised in this country, you have a good understanding of the society, you have a good understanding of sciences, alhamdulillah, you know a little bit about the deen as well. So therefore, it would be very useful if you were out there making that sort of comments and conversations. And that's how, I think it was around that sort of time, 2014, where you start to see sort of YouTube videos and little bits and bobs of me going out and about. And it was around about 2 or 3 years, I think, after that, that we then set up these channels that we have. One was the Oli Foundation Telegram channel, in which we put lots of stuff on there, videos, fatwa, articles, little kind of motivational things and all the rest of it. And then with, I think, a year or so after that, we set up we already had our Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha, which is our Dar al-Ifta in Bradford, which also is now the Dar al-Ifta for Wifaqul Ulama as well. And this has been running for ages, whatever, 15 years, maybe 20 years. But it went onto the kind of electronic platform at about 2018, 19, something like that. And then what people do is they can put their questions on there. And I used to normally respond by recording a voice note on there. But then now it gets a little bit busy, so many other things, so many other projects that I'm involved in. And then obviously the FiqHour thing idea came about back in December. And so what we do now is the questions may come on the Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha, but I answer them on this format, and then we post the video onto the group.
What's your YouTube channel?
I think this is actually on my name now, Mufti Amjid. Yeah. So there was a question that we had, I think, from the sisters group. Okay. Don't know what on that. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to know, is lip blushing allowed? Just for the benefit of everybody. This is on the ladies group. Just, got to be showing all this only. I would like to know, is lip blushing allowed? If in Islam, if halal products are used which are organic and it's almost wudu friendly, it lasts for 2 years. On Google, when we search for lip blushing, that's what it refers to. Lip blushing is a cosmetic procedure that applies permanent coloring to the lips. A provider will tattoo pigment into the lips to provide an even coloring. Lip coloring will usually be darker, immediately following a procedure before the lips heal and the color fades to the intended shade. So, of course, we know that Islam permits women in particular to ornate themselves, to make themselves look pretty, to make themselves look attractive. Less so for men. Men do groom, of course. We are 21st century men, so we do, groom. But we limit our grooming, obviously, combing the beard, applying oil to the beard, making sure we smell nice. Women have been given a little bit more of a license in which they can add color to their face, around their eyes, or anything in order to make themselves attractive. But that is limited to, obviously, their husbands. The main maqsad for them is that once they are married, they want to ensure that the husband's interest in any sexual satisfaction is with his wife and not in any other situation. What we find, unfortunately, is that when we're around the house, we dress in our sort of worst clothes, make very little effort. But when it's a wedding day and the wife gets dressed up and she goes out, the poor husband doesn't even recognize her. He's thinking, like, who's that woman who just went out? So she's making more effort when she's going to public events and family events and all the rest of it than she is when she sat with her poor husband. So the unfortunate thing that's going to happen is, obviously, his attraction is going to go elsewhere. However, all this level of beautification has its limits. One is that we shouldn't be spending hours and hours only concerned about the beautification of the body and the beautification of the face, with little time and effort in terms of the beautification of one's soul and characteristics. So that's more important. That beautification that takes place must not be permanent. Okay, it must be something that can be applied and then removed. In this question, it makes it quite clear, or the background to the question, it makes it quite clear that it is almost wudu friendly. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be wudu friendly, because this is actually putting ink into the skin, and it's no different than a tattoo. And obviously tattoos are being made impermissible anyway, because all it does is makes bleeding within the skin, and then there's trapped blood within the skin as well. So no, that would not be permissible to apply. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, your Ramadan and itikaf is going well. Jazakallah khair for answering this yesterday. In yesterday's session, there was a question about a traveling being a musafir. Could you please explain if a specific verbal intention is needed? Is knowing you're traveling or having planned to do so and intending to travel, i.e. having tickets booked, for example, sufficient? Or does an explicit intention need to be made? So when it comes to traveling, this is about the actual point of travel. Not necessarily you're buying tickets, you're going online, you're checking your passport to make sure it's in date, things like that. It's actually the journey is about to start. So you make niyyah when the journey is about to start. So that's the niyyah it's being referred to. In all niyyah, they don't need to be articulated. They don't need to be spoken. The niyyah is something of the heart, and as long as there's something in the heart, that will suffice. However, our ulama do advise is that if it is said, not like audibly, but sufficiently to get to your ears, then that's good, because it connects the mind and the body and all the actions together, rather than something which might be a passing thought. Could you also please explain the difference between Qiyamul Layl and Tuhajjud? So Qiyamul Layl is something a little bit more broader. It doesn't necessarily always have to refer to Salah. So Qiyamul Layl can also refer generally to worshipping at night. Yani keeping Ihya'ul Layl, yani keeping the night lively, active. So a person could pray, a person could recite Quran, a person could study, a person could do anything which is making this person stay awake at night. It usually takes place at the early part of the night, meaning after Isha, that sort of period, whereas Tahajjud is a dedicated prayer. It has a format, and it's done usually just before the night ends. So that is a specific prayer That's usually at a particular time, whereas obviously Qiyamul Layl is a bit more broad. It can be inclusive of other acts of worship and is usually at the sort of front end of the night. So that's the difference between those two. Some don't differentiate between the two. Some say it's the same thing. Okay, it's just the same thing. Some don't even differentiate between Qiyamul Layl, Tuhajjud, and also then Taraweeh. That, you know, it's the same thing. Okay, so there's these different arguments and positions. A bit like, for example, Ishraq and Chasht, whereas most people don't differentiate between two prayers and they say there's actually only one. Hadith only supports Salatul Duha. It's only one prayer, but it's just that there's a window to pray from sort of about 20 minutes or so after sunrise up until sort of coming towards noon, or usually halfway in between sunrise and zawal. So therefore, this open to some flexibility. Can you please explain when wudu is broken if you fall asleep? Example, does dozing off for a few seconds break wudu, or is it only broken after a proper sleep? Jazakallah khair for your time and for the opportunity to ask question. It's very much appreciated. So sleep itself doesn't break wudu, because sleep is not a nullifier of wudu. The sleep doesn't actually break wudu. So what does break wudu? It's again going back to ma kharaja min as-sabilayn, that which exits from the two body parts. Now, usually as grown adults, we can control our urine whilst we're asleep, and obviously we can definitely control defecating whilst we're asleep, but can we control the losing of air, okay, or passing of wind whilst we're asleep? That's something which we usually don't control. So the body can involuntarily, when our muscles relax, allow air to escape from the posterior. Air escaping from the posterior is a nullifier of wudu. So therefore, in those circumstances, when a person feels that they weren't aware of their body, they weren't aware of what they were doing. So, you know, either you can just sort of shut eye. Sometimes, obviously, when a person is sat on his posterior, then there's less chance of that happening, because obviously physically it's not going to happen. So, you know, it's making a kind of a sound understanding of, I'm sat like this, I've just gone like that. I'm still aware that I'm sat, I'm physically sat. I'm not falling over. I'm aware that you're sat here, but I can feel warmness and sort of, you know, going towards cloud cuckoo land, right? But I've not gone completely, and then I'm up. Now, do I think that my wudu is broken? Absolutely wouldn't be, because I feel the presence, I feel physically how I am. So the ulama speak of different things. Sometimes they say that, you know, if you are in a position of salah properly, like sat in sajda position like a man should be, in ruku as a man should be, and you fall asleep, then obviously your wudu doesn't break, because you would fall over if you're falling asleep. You can control yourself, you can manage yourself, you're holding yourself up. So even if you fall asleep in ruku, which I guess might happen to some people, falling asleep in bayans, that's obviously happens, especially after Fajr. And you know, the best place to fall asleep in a bayan is sit directly in front of the speaker and then go sleep. Yeah, don't go to the outskirts or find a wall to lean against, or a pillar or whatever. No. Brother, move away. Sit directly in front of him, make eye contact with him, and then fall asleep. And then when you fall asleep, don't just fall asleep. Make sure you let everybody know you are asleep. So snore away. Now we know that poor brother was getting all the slack. The real culprit came out now. He's the snorer. He's the secret snorer. So that all your identity have been concealed. So nobody was defamed in this whatsoever. This is our little secret, and it will stay with us, inshallah. So really, it's about that physicality when a person thinks that they're no longer in control of their self and there's air that's escaped. Obviously, ihtiyatan, it makes sense. It's not going to kill you if you make wudu, because you don't know whether you might have kind of rolled over or not, and therefore it's better to do so. So that's the understanding of what nullifies wudu. This sister is very efficient, mashallah. So she goes, Jazakallah khair for answering. So obviously she's watching it live at the same time. Barakallah feek. So I think that's all the questions that have come on here. So we have some time. Hit 14 minutes. So we got at least another 14 minutes, but we do normally stretch it, go over a little bit.
Should we have done our Sadaqat al-Fitr before coming for itikaf?
Should we have?
Sadaqat al-Fitr, should we have done that already?
No, it's not. I think sometimes people feel it's an absolute necessity to do so. It is better to do so, but not a necessity. So one can obviously still send it, give it to, because normally if you say give it into a masjid or something like that, I think they have it on the right hand side. When I was doing a little checker this morning, it has the wajib and zakat, and on the the machine on the right as you're going out. So obviously, if somebody gives a sadaqat al-fitr today or tomorrow, then what will the masjid have in place in order to make sure it's being dispensed appropriately? So therefore, if a person does do that, they can do that. It is mentioned, obviously, the recommendation is given is so that whilst we have Eid meals, then those who are in desperate circumstances can also enjoy an Eid meal. But it's a responsibility that needs to be done, basically.
You could do it online these days.
You could do online as well these days, most charities. But even if you do online, like I said, you'd have to see what the charity's terms are, because it might be that they don't distribute it, because there is a little bit of a lag, isn't there, for charities. So say if I give some money now, it would immediately arrive, say, in Gaza, or immediately arrive in Sham or something? Probably not. What's the lag time? Some charities will have 3 weeks. Some charity might have 2 weeks. Some charities might have a month. Some for the whole process to go, for the money to be transferred, then to be food products to be purchased, then to be moved to the particular location for distribution. It's quite a complicated sort of thing. I know charities will give this nice, smooth operation, but it is quite, it's a task and a half.
Maulana Soeb is collecting for the fitrana. If you want to give today, tomorrow is last day.
There you go.
Just a quick question on fitrana. Quick answer, hopefully. The sa that we have to give, does it have to be based on here or the destination?
The sa that you give, that's based on here. Yeah. I don't know if things are coming in. Yeah, that's based on your value here. When it's udhiyah, qurbani, it's obviously the animal wherever the animal is. When it's the zakat, then it's based on zakat, and zakat al-fitr is based on where you are. Any others for others? Yeah.
So a mother-in-law gave her daughter-in-law a large amount of gold. The daughter-in-law said to the mother-in-law to look after it, to keep it safe for her.
So the mother-in-law gave it to the daughter-in-law and said to the daughter-in-law to look after it for her.
The daughter-in-law said,
then give it back to the mother-in-law.
So she said, can you look after it?
Okay.
You've got a safe, so can you put it in your safe?
Okay.
So she put it in her safe. But then the marriage ended. So the daughter-in-law was divorced, and she completely cut all contact and is unreachable. They don't know where she is or how to give her gold back, or what do they do with that gold? And they tried to reach out to her. They tried to.
Well, it's a really strange circumstance that they cannot find her.
Yeah, they don't know where she is. Honestly.
That's what I mean. Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying you're a liar, mashallah. I've heard you're a lama, so the last thing I would do is accuse a lama of a liar or a llama. As I said, I find it really difficult unless she's been kidnapped or whatever,
Social media off.
Yeah, so they must know family members, they must have, how long was a girl married? She might be married for several years. 2 years. So she must have a mother, a father, a brother, a sister.
Son and mother, they don't have contact.
Okay, so they would have to keep it until they find her. It's her mal. Once you've taken amana, that's the thing. When that mother-in-law took it, then she should have been sort of, made aware that I'm taking responsibility. Now it's her responsibility to make sure that goes back to that particular person. So they'd have to travel to Pakistan, find out, which village she's from or which city she's from, and start asking around for, any relatives, whatever, and then try to locate her. If she's dead, then they would find her who are inheritors her and then distribute amongst her inheritors. But they would have to find, they took that responsibility.
Right. To a brother or
no, because obviously you do not know that if that brother is going to keep it or pass it on. So you'd have to find the lady, the actual person, and that's the thing about taking amana. People just sort of think, oh, I'll keep this for you, whatever. It is a pretty serious thing. So whenever you take something from someone, have that conversation with them that, okay, what if I can't find you? What can I do? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? I said, we can be a little bit nonchalant with these kind of things and a bit lackadaisical and not think about it. Now I'm assuming it's worth quite a bit as well. So, it's not, a couple of £100, which you can give away and say, okay, if she turns up, then I'll give her £200 from my pocket. It's several £1,000s, if not more. So they will have to locate her because it's hers. Right, perfect.
So just a couple of questions. First one, if the father is leading Tarawih and he makes a mistake, and when that mistake is corrected, he tuts or he gets a bit annoyed by his voice or by his actions from his mouth, what happens to the Salah?
Well, any kind of noise or expression or anything which is contrary to Salah is problematic. But obviously, because it's I won't say it's a common practice, but because it's happening in a few sort of places, if it's not excessive, that is not something which is a word that's coming out or has, a syllable, more than a syllable, then, so it's less than a syllable, or so it's one on, that's it, then we will try to excuse that and say that it just brings some karaha to the Salah, but it does not break the Salah in any way. But obviously, again, this is all about teaching as well beforehand. That is, everyone has made sure that people understand what's what and what they can and can't say.
The second question: somebody habitually fasts or regularly fasts on a Monday, Thursday, and it happens to be Yawm al-Shaq, then what do they do on that day?
They can still keep their fast. So Yawm al-Shaq is, for instance, like what we've had here. This was a perfect example. This Ramadan of Yawm al-Shaq. So we didn't have anyone declaring independently the start of Eid on Monday, okay, apart from KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They declared on Monday. I think we started on Tuesday, wasn't it? Yeah, so they declared on Monday. But nobody, apart from those who just follow KSA, and nobody made any independent sighting. In fact, all the way to California, nobody saw it. So what if you were sort of thinking, yeah, but, what if they did see it? This is a fast, isn't it? It's not something I should be messing about with. I won't tell Mama Shuaib, but you know what? I'll just keep it, just to be on the safe side. What does it matter? If it's not, it's a nafal, and if it is, alhamdulillah, it's a fard fast. That's the problem. That's Yawm al-Shaq. So you cannot do that. You cannot just to cover your back or to put your bets on black and red in order to basically avoid. So you cannot do that.
I've got a counter question. Yeah? What if you're in a different area at the time and your local masajid's following Saudi? So you started the fast on Monday, but then when you come back to your local area, obviously Queen's Road started on Tuesday. So can you still count that first one as a nafil because you was following your local masjid at the time when you was at that place?
What you should do, I know there's always this argument of local masjid, and it's used quite a lot that, what should a Joe public do? Okay, so you would have to associate to a masjid. Now, even if you're so like I'm not associated with Masjid Umar, I'm obviously from Bradford, so I wouldn't necessarily. So I would go by that masjid I'm associated with,
even if you're somewhere in a different place.
Absolutely, because I know that I've accepted that Imam Sahib. I'm going to pray behind that Imam Sahib. I've accepted their times of Salah. I've accepted when they declare the new month. My wilayat is to them. I pledge my allegiance. They're my Amir al-Mu'mineen. I pledge my allegiance to them. That's my wilayah. And that's what everyone has to do. This is one of the points I mentioned in the, I think, was it here or downstairs or somewhere, when I said you find a mufti, I think it might have been here actually. Yeah, that you find a scholar, the uterus, and you're giving him your wilayah. Now, obviously, it's not a political bay, but it's a fiqhi bay. It's a jurisprudic bay. That, alhamdulillah, this brother seems to know what he's talking about. So whatever he says at Salah times, whatever, and that's what the person goes by. The only reason why they say go with your local masjid is so that not to burden the average guy, because the average guy is now thinking, okay, the one I normally go with, he does it on this day, but my masjid's doing it on this day, so I'm going to end up celebrating Eid on my own. I'm just going to sit, and everyone is going to do it on Wednesday, and I'm like Thursday, whoopee, and no one is there. And where am I going to do my Eid Salah? Where am I going to go? So that's the only reason why ulama will say that for that sake, okay, for your ease there, brother, do it in that way. But otherwise, if you're going to end up going back to the masjid that you're normally associated with, but you just happen to be in this other masjid for whatever, then in that place, you wouldn't necessarily fast that day, because you're going to go back to that other masjid. If, however, you're in a different country, so if you're in, say, you travel to Saudi Arabia and you're going to do Umrah there, and you arrive 3-4 days before Ramadan starts, and now they make a declaration, now you have to fast. Okay, the day that Saudi tells you when to fast, because your wilayah now is with Saudi, because you've gone as a visitor, and the visa requirements means you abide by their laws. One of their laws is that it's the start of Ramadan, so now you have to fast with them. Then when you come back to the UK, then obviously whichever, the only problem is, you see, is that we do not have one wilaya here. That's where we're stuck. What should have happened, which did kind of happen with Jamiyat Ulama Britannia, is what should have happened is when our forefathers came here, there should have been one group of ulama. Right? When they had that one group of ulama, that should have been the National Board of Ulama. With that National Board of Ulama, everything should be agreed upon. So then we started getting fractions, Hizbul Ulama, this, that, the other, and then the moon thing came, and now we've got so many fractions. So we've got different Salah times. We've got some, mashallah, who, the brother was asking me the other day. So some of us are praying our Fajr Salah, and some of us are just about finishing the Suhoor, and within the city, within, only like 20 minutes, half an hour away. It shouldn't be like that. Okay, because that's making a whole mockery of the deen in a way. There has to be some kind of acceptance. And others, for example, they'll be praying their Isha Salah, and yet we'd be waiting another half an hour, 45 minutes for Isha Salah to start. Similarly, in the same street, somebody's celebrating Eid, somebody's not celebrating Eid. So that's our problem as Muslims in the UK. But really, there should be one. And if there's one, then we give our allegiance to that one group of people. So therefore, that would be the response to that, inshallah.
The dua for Laylatul Qadr, is it Allahumma innaka afuwwun tuhibbul or afuwwun kareemun tuhibbul? What's the reported in the hadith?
It's not the Kareemun addition that I can recall from memory. Yeah, we finally see that sometimes we just feel that, that dua is just not enough. Right? We could do better.
It's common to hear the Kareem.
Yeah, we can do better. So we add bits to it. We add bits to it. So even like, for example, when you're eating, Bismillah wa ala barakatillah. Has anybody ever found the wa ala barakatillah part that's added to it? You don't find that. Okay, in narrations, you just find Bismillah. So, we see so many places where there's additions to it because we feel that it's not enough. If you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, it was very simple. We have really complicated things in a big, big way. Life was very, very simple. But we just don't feel it's enough. And in fact, this very same situation happened when 3 companions came to ask where the Prophet ﷺ was, and he was absent. So they asked his one of his wives, and does he pray and all night? And she said no. Sometimes he prays, sometimes he doesn't pray. And then does he fast every day? No, some days he fasts, some days he doesn't fast. So then they started having a conversation. They said, who are we? Why did we even come to ask the Prophet ﷺ? He's whose past sins and future sins have been forgiven. Why are we looking at him as a namuna? Right? I said, as of today, I'm going to stay awake every night. Alhamdulillah. I said, as for today, I'm going to fast every day. As for me, I'm never going to get married. And off they went. So when the Prophet ﷺ comes back, because they just didn't feel it was enough. So when the Prophet ﷺ comes back, like a man walks home, he just asks, Hajjal, what's news, whatever. So she mentioned a few of your Sahabi came, this is the conversation, this is what I heard. He became very angry. So he asked who they were, they went. So he said that I stand and I go to sleep, I fast, I don't fast, and I marry. That person who turns away from my sunnah is of me. So when you make the deen difficult, then it becomes difficult upon you. So it's there, it's simple. A person out of taqwa wants to do extra things of that which has been legislated. Don't make it extra, what you've already received, and say, oh, I'm going to kind of fluff this out a little bit now. I'm going to add to this. You want to recite more. You want to pray more nawafil, pray more nawafil. You want to fast 2-3 days in a week, fast 2-3 days in a week. And that's where we have to be a little bit careful about. And then you get, some of the conversations I've been having with a few brothers downstairs, where certain people then start getting disheartened from some ulama because, I read a hadith in this book, and I read that, and I didn't find it in there, and Maulvi Sahib's been telling me to do this all the time, and Maulvi Sahib's intention might have been, I'm going to push these guys. You know what they say, don't they? Aim for the stars and you land on the moon. So if I push these guys for the stars, they might land on the moon. But what that's done is that it's not people now in cities like London or whatever. They're not simple village people. Where in simple village people, you would say to them, aim for the stars and they would land on the moon, and it won't be a problem. These people are reading. These people are studying. They're being accessing different types of thoughts, different types of ideas. So now they just feel that they've been sort of done over, and that trust factor is gone. So when the trust factor goes, then you've got bigger issues, haven't you? So that's something that we have to be a little bit careful about.
Bismillah. Just a thought, and maybe it's your field as well. As in, you talked about Udaya and about Qurbani.
You
ever see it happen in the UK in any form or shape?
In
masses in terms of legislation and everything else like that.
Like doing, no, that won't happen because of the fact that it will be considered you need a license to be able to do that sort of thing. So the nearest I've seen come to it is a few places in Yorkshire, around that area, where you actually go the night before to the pens. You pick your animal. If you're brave enough, you jump into the pen and do a little bit of wrestling with them or whatever it is that takes your fancy. I don't kind of like that sort of stuff, but some of the guys I went with, they enjoyed it. And then they label that particular animal, tag it, and then that's the animal you get. That's the nearest you're going to get to anything. As to actually doing slaughter, I don't think that will ever happen. More so because of diseases that have come and gone, and malpractice and all the rest of it. And obviously, blood is considered as a something that can spread disease, and if it's doing so, I can't see that happening. Back home, so to speak, that's not a problem. But here, that's not a possibility. You've got a question come in. I got another question. I'm self-employed, and I'm waiting for my accountant to get back to me about my tax figure, which I think will be around 3,000. My question is, do I wait after my accountant has worked this out and I have paid my tax to pay zakat, or do I pay on what I have pre-tax? I assume it's counted as an expense that needs to be deducted. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so with regards to the year's tax, not any future taxes, this particular year's tax, then the accountant can give you an idea that you've earned 40K, so you're going to be paying X amount of tax from this money, and that is a debt. And as it's a debt, that can be deducted. Okay, any future can't if it's outside of this lunar year, because you can't take those off. But that in that year, whatever is a debt in that year, that can be deducted. You can go by, because really accountants know exactly what figure, because they make the figure up for you, so they know exactly what they're going to deduct. It's not as though it's they're thinking, oh, it might be this, it might be that, because they actually ask you what figure would you like to give, and then they give that figure, so they'll be able to have an idea. If obviously there's some miscalculation, then you will compensate for that miscalculation, but generally speaking, that figure is right. Another 2 questions. It's okay if your dad answers this tomorrow. Not my dad. This is my daughter. My dad just slammed the phone on me. I have a current account used for bills, mortgage, and all household expenditure. So anything I receive is used up by the following month. But since we are in the middle of the month and I need to pay my zakat, I have above the nisab amount at the moment. My question is, do I include this in my zakat calculation, even though it'll be used up by the end of the month, or is it just my savings? So anything which is in your current account, which is going to be paying a bill that is like energy, water, council tax, that will be deducted. Okay, not things like your Netflix bill or your Sky bill or whatever else is going out, but those which are energy, water, and income tax, not income tax, council tax. Okay, because these are fixed and these are necessary for you to live. Without them, so you can deduct those for that month. Do I include savings that I have for my daughter? This is for tuition fees. It depends who the owner is of those fees. It depends who the owner is of that money. If you have transferred ownership from you to your daughter, okay, so let's just say some people save money for their kids, and if you've transferred ownership, so even though you're the guardian, but you are no longer the owner of that money, not that it's a little secret pot for you to dip into as and when you choose, but you've actually made your daughter the owner, and your daughter is now baligh, then there's no zakat for her, because you are no longer the owner of that money. But if your daughter is baligha, then obviously she has to deal with her own zakat for her own money. If, however, it's still your money, okay, it's still your money, but just for administration purposes, you've just set an account up for your daughter and you've just put it in there, but it's still your money, then yes, you will add that to your savings, okay? It just depends who the owner is of that money. So just to repeat, so if that money is being moved over and now you have made your daughter the malika, she is the owner of it, now we look to see, does she meet the criteria for zakat? Is she baligha? Does she have above nisab? Has she had it for a year? If she meets that, then she's now an independent human, an independent mukallaf, and now she will give her own zakat. If, on the other hand, the parent is still the owner, but they've just put it there for administrative purpose, so they don't spend it, that, okay, I spend £100 a month on my kids' tuition fees, so £1,200 for the year, I'm just going to park that up so I don't spend it, but she's still the owner, then obviously, yes, you would add that to your own calculations and deduct accordingly.
So just an offshoot from that question, if your daughter becomes a baligha, does she have to physically pay the money, or can you pay on her behalf?
You can, yeah, you can pay on her behalf. I always sort of advocate that, you know, it is a ritual act of worship. You know, I know it's monetary, but it's a ritual act of worship. Therefore, it's better that the person does it. You might help them.
The figure's quite big. It's quite a big figure. And
the child's.
Yeah, the child, not to make her aware that you've got this much money.
Okay. Also, you don't want to tell the child that she's like got 20 grand or 15 grand or 30 grand. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
Because obviously, if she's in charge of her, she's a woman now, isn't she? She's liable for Zakat.
Yeah, but then why, if it's her money, why would somebody be sort of concealing it from her? It's her money.
She might want to spend it on clothes, isn't it?
But she's example, obviously working in school, that you get money because at the age of 7, 8, 9, but you want to tell a 7-year-old and 8-year-old,
well, the youngest you can have as a baligha in Hanafi school or in all schools is 9. That's the youngest you can have as a baligha. So, but you know,
telling her that 9-year-old, you got 10,000 pounds.
Yeah, but no, what you would do then is you would restrict it, wouldn't you? So it'd be like you would tie it up in a bond, or you would suggest that it's tied up in a bond that she cannot access till she's 18, 19, 20. So you'll make her aware of it, that this is there, it's a nest egg, it's for your marriage or whatever it's for, a deposit for a house, whatever it's for. So it's there, that's yours. You got to give zakat. So this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to calculate it. Obviously, as a 9-year-old, she's not going to know what to do. We're going to calculate, this is how much you've got, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to send this to that charity. So, you know, there it goes. Because she's got to get used to giving money away. Because what we do is when we give kids a very small amount of money, they become very miserly, and they just want to hold on to it. Okay? And then suddenly when they get older, we start to say, oh, you know, give zakat. They're thinking, actually, no, I can't give money away. And even, mashallah, that person's got like 20, 30 grand. They really struggle now to give it away. So it's a very key thing that, not that we all, you know, spoil our kids, but we're giving sufficient so that they aren't miserly, and also then teach them to give. Okay, teach them to give. And then that becomes, you know, I've seen grown adults behaving that way because of their childhoods. Grown adults, you know, that struggle now to give because of the fact that they've never had it, and now they suddenly get it, and they think, oh no, I might lose it, I might not have enough, whatever. So this is about the tarbiyah part as well. Yeah, it's very important, this tarbiyah. You know, you underestimate how much, you know, from 0 to 7 has an influence on your whole life. You really, really underestimate.
Just on it, if you've got a child savings account and there's interest accruing on it, and every year you take that, you want to give that sum into charity without the intention of reward, would the parent, the guardian of that savings account, need to take interest out of that specific account and then give it away, or could they just give it from their own money? And
they can give it from their own money. Yeah. That's right, absolutely. Because they can leave that as it is because they're still a guardian. So their niyyah is that £25, £50, whatever they've gained in that year, here's that £25, £50, and that's given it. And that what was your money now is basically in that child's account. That £50 that was interest is now your money because you've given it from your money. So yeah, that would balance that out. Yeah. Salam, are we allowed to recite Quran for the dead? Okay, so this is a whole kind of another kind of worms, mashallah, that people really get into, is the concept of isal thawab, and that is the transferring of the reward for a deed onto somebody else. It could be living or dead. And there are some restrictions. Some groups will say that no, the only thing that you can do is like the Prophet ﷺ did, which was to slaughter some rams for the ummah. Okay, and that's it. So you cannot do anything else. You cannot recite Quran. You cannot do this. You cannot do that. You cannot do this because there's no hadith for it. So this is why I've written a book which is called Muslims in Non-Muslim Lands, and I then split the Muslim community into 3 broad areas. What I call the literalists, who literally apply narrations, the modernists, who we've already kind of discussed, 1 or 2 people who would fall in my modernist bracket, and then the traditionalists, okay, who I have in the middle. Now again, even though I put them in 3 distinct groups, it's more like a spectrum. Okay, so you get some people who are traditionalists but with a little bit of a modernist swing to them. You get some people who are traditionalists with a little bit of a literalist swing to them. Then you get literalists who've got a little bit of a traditionalist swing to them. Then you get modernists who've got a little bit. So, you've got to read it to kind of fully understand that. According to us, the traditionalist position, Imam Nawawi writes in great detail, as do many of the other, Imam Aini as well. Many of the ulama have written in great detail that the concept of Isal Swab is valid. Okay, and it's not limited to just, say, animal slaughter, but it can be a recitation of Quran. It can be any deed that you perform, and you can make a request and you will say, oh Allah, the reward for this deed give to such and such person. Okay, and Allah will give the reward to such and such person, and make the near that you also get reward for it as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possessor of great bounty, and you will get so as well. So you get this kind of conversation that's taking place as well. So yes, that would be valid to do so.
Well, would that be just for like a particular marhum, or can it be a broad thing for all the deceased of the ummah?
It can be for anybody. You don't have to restrict it to one particular individual. Yeah. It's not as though, it would become such that if it was shared out between the whole ummah, that the real person that you aimed for only gets like a piece of an ayat or something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possessor of great bounty. So if you finish the Khatm al-Quran and you say, well, Allah, give the reward for, my parents and all the generations that came before, all the way to Adam al-Islam, from my parents, there's nothing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is incapable of. There's no shortage of reward that he has. So absolutely. I hear from people music is allowed as long as it's a single instrument being used. I know this isn't true for us, as music is music. But do any of the other schools of thought believe this? There's some discussion, obviously, around the use of a single-sided drum, if you can use that word, basically a skin stretched over a wooden frame, a bit like a tambourine without the I don't know what those other bits are called, the jingle bits along the, those things along there. Yeah, all the way along, but the skin part. So there is some discussion upon that. We see narrations. The Prophet ﷺ even mentions to when a rukhsati is taking place from the Ansar, that announce it, hit the duff, make elan of your nikahs. We see an example of it, of the two girls in his presence, striking it. We see another example of an African lady playing it whilst the Prophet ﷺ is there and other companions are there. So we've seen examples of it. So clearly there seems to be something there, but that is just like the striking of something. That's it. Can you consider it as music? Okay, now obviously music is like a whole new thing, isn't it? It's a whole new area. So therefore, we would not say that music is something which is permissible in that regard. But we can see that there's some element of it in there, the striking of the duff, whatever. So there is something there. Some ulama will restrict that and say, yes, but that's only in reference to little girls. So that's not a problem. Some will say, if it's only a female-only environment and there's a wedding or something taking place, and, women, I know in some of our villages, they have like the mange thing, and I don't know what you call that, where they put water in it. Yeah, and they hit that. The thing that you keep water in it, made out of clay pot. Yeah, women strike that. Okay, so in villages back home, Yemeni women have a certain type of thing. So, you'll see within women, especially around wedding times, that they will strike on something just to get like a kind of a beat. So there seems to be something there. But like I said, music in the 21st century is a whole new ball game. It's a whole new ball game. Alhamdulillah, 44 minutes. We've pushed it to the limit. Oh,
a quick question.
Yeah. Here we go. It's rubbing off, huh?
Is flossing allowed while you're fasting?
Yeah, absolutely. Why? You're not consuming. The thing that you have to be concerned about in Ramadan is consuming something. So if you dislodge something and you spit it out, then it's fine. We know we can use a miswak, and the miswak is also in such a way that it's got fibers. Those fibers will get between your teeth if you've got gaps between your teeth, and it will dislodge things. So therefore, and all you have to do, as long as it's spat out, it's not a problem.
What is the center way of using miswak?
Yeah, there's some discussion. I think it's normally people do this, but from what I recall, it's sideways. From my reading of the topic, I don't think there's a specific restriction on it as such, because when you get like the sizes, we've seen different sort of sizes in the hadith, but we see that thickness of a finger, length of about a handspan sort of length. You see that mentioned as well. But you know, I wouldn't make it too restrictive. I always try to be a little bit careful of making things restrictive, because then, you know, people become too focused in that way. Is circumcision a fard or sunnah, and how was this during the time of the Prophet ﷺ? So obviously it is one of those things which is a sunnah, but it's become like a fard. Okay, like adhan. Okay, adhan is not fard. But would you pray anyway without adhan? So there's certain sha'air, as they refer to, there's certain sha'air, there's certain symbols of Islam which have become of that kind of caliber, of that sort of level. So, you know, would anybody not circumcise their son? You know, they wouldn't, because it's a definition. We know of Ibrahim alayhi salatu from records, you know, he was an elderly man when he performed that act on himself. So therefore, it is something which it's a symbol of Islam. And because it's a symbol of Islam, it's something that is encouraged. So it is understood as a fard, if that makes sense. I remember when, you know, was it tsunami or something in India took place, and they were deciding how they were going to bury the dead, and they determined whether someone was a Hindu or a Muslim for a bloke anyway, by looking at his circumcision. So when they found the circumcised men, then they buried them, and when they found uncircumcised men, they burnt them. You know, I think this was after the tsunami, I think, in India. It's going back a bit, maybe about 5-10 years or something like that. So it is a symbol of Islam. It's something which identifies us as separate. So therefore, it's something that should be, even though from a technical perspective, there might be a technicality, but as it's understood, it's sort of virtually compulsory in that way.
Dua in our own language. I know we can't do it in Fard Salah, but in Tuhajjud, could we do dua in our own language in Sajda, or would it just have to be as Sajda, not in Salah?
You can do du'as that are Arabic, masnoon du'as in Sajda, in Nawafil, but you would avoid any in one's own language.
Okay, you'd have to just do a Sajda.
As a Sajda, if you want to do it as a Sajda, as a dua. But remember, there's not much of a practice there unless it happens out of emotion. There's not much of a record of the Prophet sort of in Sajda making, you know, well, even though he spoke Arabic, but you know what I mean. So it was done in that way. After you said my mum's zakat won't be accepted, well, I didn't use exactly those words. I'm always very careful what I say. I tend not to use black and white words, as you probably realize, and that's intentional. But anyway, let's carry on. After you said my mum's zakat won't be accepted as she had not done proper due diligence, my mum has said she has been giving zakat like this for years. So people approach her saying people are in need of zakat, and she gives. Has this been void over the years? Many, many years? Yeah, well, what can I say? See, the issue is this. Let me answer it in this way. That if somebody has not ascertained whether somebody is liable for zakat and just gone by that person saying that I'm poor, but hasn't looked into what the definition of poor is. You know, you ask quite a lot of people in the UK, and they say, I'm poor, and I'm on benefits, I'm poor. But they'll have significant amount of money. So poor, you see, is it's not a very good description of what poor is. That's why when the Muslims had to determine poverty, they had to establish nisab. So they had to give a figure to say, okay, what do we say? How do we determine someone as a faqir? How do we determine someone as a miskin? So they set that value. So the only way she'll have to ascertain is whether that person was below that nisab. I cannot give any other answer. If she doesn't know that, or she knows that, then inshallah her zakat is valid. If she can look back and think, well, I've been giving it to my nephew, or I've been giving it to my next door neighbor, and they've not had 2 shillings to rub together and they lived off my money, then inshallah it's acceptable. Only Allah knows if it is acceptable, because we're now going historically and trying to determine it historically, which is not easy. So she's the best judge of that, because she will know the people, or she can now try to find out about those people, and they will have to tell her that actually we used to have money, we had gold, we had this, we had that, but we didn't want to sell it because it was our mother's heirloom or whatever it was. So I leave that to your good selves. So alhamdulillah, What day is it today?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Seems like Wednesday is a tricky day. So we'll stop for that, mashallah. We've got plenty done on there. And at least we'll have a 5-10 minute breather, inshallah, before we have our contemporary conversation that our Sajid buyers put together for us. May Allah bless him. Wa akhiru da'wana. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Quick mashwara.
Ajah.